back. Oh, we're
Sorry.
recording now, folks.
Yeah.
Tony says that replacing a system on average can be about $15,000. So we consulted with each other about how to do that. And we came up with an idea of a $45,000 category called capital repairs. That would be used to replace systems that we think are old and need to be swapped out. That's a pretty chunky little budget category when you're looking at a $4,000 profit for the year. So we might need to trim that as the season goes on, but at least we're taking a step in the right direction. There's a couple other things in there. He created, Tony and I talked about this, created a budget category to show all of our sale related expenses. And that can has a lot to throw in there. Legal fees, Tony's fees for doing sale related work, the environmental cleanup, a preliminary study we did. The bill for that was $7,500. We paid $3,500, so we have $4,000 to go. He's projecting a total of $20,000, and we could easily reach that with legal fees alone. But some of these things, as they say, as we go forward, we're going to have to trim. But I appreciate that Tony tried to address all the priorities that we wanted. You guys have any thoughts on this budget as you look at it?
Well, John, I'm looking at the last email that came for the revised budget, and I don't have a budget attached to it, which was on 1/7 at 9:04. You sent it out. There's no budget attached to this.
Should be a link at the bottom that you click on.
The one that came before that on January 6th at 3:52 has a spreadsheet attached to it.
Yeah, because we got it. We got it. Yeah.
I think the one you might be looking at is the response.
Would it be helpful to see it on the screen right now, Uncle Hank?
Just tell me what date this one that has the attachment came on.
1/6.
6. I've got 5 of them here, and I don't see one from 1/6.
This is January 6th at 4:52 p.m. Eastern, just before 5 p.m. last Saturday.
And that's the only one that has the budget attached?
Yes, sir. That's what I just clicked
I don't have it.
Let me send it to you again as we're sitting here.
I could share that visually, but Nancy, I don't have screen share permission.
Yeah, here, I'm going to, you know what, I think it's easiest. I'm just going to make you host for now.
Big responsibility.
So you can be the host as long as you want to do that stuff, and then just turn it back when you're tired.
Okay.
So
hey, Hank, I just emailed that, sent you that email that you should hopefully have it and can click on the attachment.
Okay, hold on.
Does that work for you, Lisa? Or?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Should have it. The bottom line is total expenses $1,000,004.
Got it.
Got it. Okay. Much of that budget replicates pretty much what we had this year. The biggest thing is that capital repairs category, which would be to replace old systems, and then the keeping track of the sale related expenses. The sale related expenses as of December 31st were a little over $9,000. So we envision adding another $10,000 to that as we go forward. And if we do decide to sell the property, of course, the lawyer will have to draw up a sale agreement, contract, and all that kind of thing, which will take a lot of that left over. The point here, though, as they say, we're trying to address this idea that we need to do a lot better job of finding looking down our old systems, just staring at them and say, this one is over a lifespan, we need to replace it. And that comes directly out of the family's discussion last time. What concerns me is this budget margin at the end of the year is so thin that we're going to have to make some trims here and there, because anything could go wrong with this. We saw in November and December how how many system failures we had when we started firing up heating systems. And there's no guarantee that that won't happen with air conditioning in the summer season. We'll try to avoid it, but I mean, there are no guarantees when you have buildings as old as we have.
Didn't we go with portable units for the air conditioning?
Well, the
Yes,
ones that were
yeah.
needed to be replaced, yeah.
Yeah, that's the
But
way
the
to go.
problem
Not
is with the air
portable units.
conditioning, oh, they were cheap, you're right, but if the problem, excuse me, with the air conditioners, of course, is that since they've changed the way the Freon that's used in the air conditioners now, if any of our air conditioners do break and they're older, they do have to be replaced because they can't be fixed. So that's another kind of thing that's standing out there that, you know, could come up sometime when everybody turns them on in May or something, you know.
What we did there, Hank, we have now, as I understand it, 2 dead rooftop air conditioning units atop the Arcadia building, which were going out. One was dead, and I think the other was kind of near death. And rather than hire a crane for a couple $1,000s to take those off the roof and take the ones back up, we went with the window units, which was Tony's suggestion, and saved us a bundle.
And they like them too. We got good feedback from the tenants about them.
Any questions, ideas about this? It seems pretty straightforward. As I say, we would just have to watch this budget very closely during the year and almost certainly have to make some corrections as we go on, because this is a very optimistic budget, and it's also an extremely tight budget.
Now, does that number for the owner's payment, is that based on the actual number, or is that the new number that we instituted?
The owner draw, you mean?
Yeah.
What Tony did, since we're this month in January, as you know, we kept a 10% reduction in place. And I told Tony that we'd discuss whether to continue that or not. And so for the purposes of making sure we had a little bit of room, he's projected that from February through December, we'll go back to the full distribution amount. So the only reduced month would be this month, January. Now, if we keep the 10% on, it'll be something less. This year, I believe, this past year, we wound up at $675,000, the owner's draw for the year. What he's projecting here is slightly below 670,000.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Sure, and that's, as you can all easily see, that is by far our biggest expense account, and that's going to be a key in our discussions later in this conference call. That it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, if you will, and it's something we got to talk about. But any other questions on the budget at all, or comments?
When I was the manager, I asked Tony one time to figure out for me, you know, what percent of what we make from the, you know, what we get from the properties goes to the distributions. And depending on whether we've had a reduction or something's gone on, it's between 47 and 49%. So it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah.
Anybody else? So item 2, we can slide right into, and Tommy, your comment is very timely, because it's going to focus on that owner draw. That's a heavy duty item in the budget. If we go back to a full draw for February through December, it's going to make the rest of the budget exceedingly tight. And I'll remind you all that we had a pretty terrible 2 months in November and December. I went back and looked at the numbers, and I believe I include them. If any of you had a chance to look at my reasons to sell email, I tallied up that terrible 2 months, and it was a little over $40,000. Replacing a failed water heater in an apartment, replacing a failed heating unit on top of the roof of the Visible Changes salon, and $13,000 for a new heating element at James Wong Laundry. And that was just one heating season. There's no guarantee that we might not have something like that happen at the end of the year, this year, when we get into heating season. I mean, they're old buildings, old equipment. And again, we're going to try to address that with this capital repairs budget,
Tell them I'll call them back.
buy old systems and replace them early, but it's a guessing game. So let's go to item number 2 here, which is whether to continue the 10% reduction of the owner's monthly distribution amounts. That's item number 2, and we need to address that because if we make a change, I got to let Tony know pretty quickly.
Well, I say, let's go with stay with the 10%.
I agree, Tommy.
I do too. I agree also.
How long would you want to do this for the rest of the year, or just do it 2-3 months and take a look at it, or what?
I would say at least 6 months.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because let's face it, it's a $5,600 savings each month when we don't pay ourselves that extra 10%. It's not a lot. So you need to have it go on for a certain number of time just to, to save up enough that it's going to actually contribute to paying some bills.
Mhm.
Well, let's hear from somebody else.
All right, well,
Mhm.
Liz, what do you think?
well, I don't know. My brother is painting such a nasty picture. You're not gonna like what I would have to say.
Laura,
I
Go
think
ahead.
we could cut it in half, but I know nobody's gonna like that. So I suppose we'll just continue. Yeah, but
Okay,
I don't know.
If you do it for 6 more months or 5 more months, that would essentially be a year,
36,000.
correct, that you've done this?
Yeah,
Right.
yes,
We
That's
started-
true. That's true.
yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's right.
So if you will, if not hearing any objections, as they say in a courtroom, why don't we extend this through June the 30th? And then if we still have the property, then reconsider or reevaluate. Does that sound fair to people?
yes.
Yes.
By the way,
Yes.
Laura is not on there. Oh,
she
Thank you.
just got
Ethel's
home.
yeah.
She just got home from the doctor. She'll
Oh,
be
okay.
up in a second.
because without Laura or Ethel's votes, I guess it still doesn't.
Yeah, I
Still a
mean, Kath,
majority.
did Ethel weigh in? My guess is Ethel would be fine with continuing, not fine, but she would agree to it.
Yeah,
Okay.
she would.
Okay.
I think so.
What is
Yeah.
the total savings? That starts to add up, right? If you're saying it's
Yeah.
about $5,600 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look
Yeah.
at Bill, just
36,000.
any of the budgets from the last year or two, the draw per month is about
Six,
56,000, 57,000. So 10% is $5,600 or $5,700. And over 6 months, I mean, that's
30 between 30, 35 grand. It's that could go towards other things that
Mhm.
HVAC
And-
fund.
yes.
Yeah.
It is tight, and obviously nobody can predict the future. You don't know what's going to break, and we can start replacing things, but with our luck, we'd replace 2 systems and the third one would break.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll do that then. We'll keep the 10% reduction in place through the first 6 months through June 30, and then we could reevaluate it, sometime prior to that.
Okay,
Okay.
All right, so Lisa has done a very extensive study, apparently on her own. I just saw a sneak glimpse of it here a few minutes ago. Lisa, it's all yours. You have the floor.
Great. All right, so at our last Zoom, Nancy asked if I might be willing to consider putting together some ideas for keeping the property. And it was a bit of a daunting task for me. And so, full disclaimer, I don't have a business background, but I did a lot of research. I did a lot of reading of contracts and the appraisal and the financials. And my husband, who is a financial consultant in auditing and finance, helped me put together some numbers for the Thomas side of the family. Predicated upon all of this, there are some assumptions because I'm missing some key information that would have given me exact numbers. But where I've made assumptions, I will try to lay that out for you. So I'm going to share my screen with the presentation, and I did email this out to everyone. So if you want to look at it later at your leisure, you can do that. So can everybody see? Is it showing up yet?
well, it did, and then it went
Yeah, it's loading.
It's
It's
still-
loading, yeah.
Yeah. we're
All
good.
right. So you're seeing it now. All right. So again, as a successor, I have perhaps a different perspective that I'm bringing into this. We own a property that is 103 years old. And initially, obviously, when this began with Uncle George and he passed it on to his sisters, it was a very close-knit family. And there was probably, more cooperation easily done within that. As the generations have gone on, now here we are, this collective group. And as I discovered when I was reading John's Christmas card at Dad's house, I don't know anything about the Nolans, really. I've met you maybe twice. And so we're really a collective group of strangers who happen to be related by blood. And we live all over the country or in Spain. And so making these kinds of decisions is a challenge. So as has been pointed out, with this property being 103 years old, there are many challenges to that, many financial challenges. And perhaps it does sound like a good time to divest ourselves of that. However, I think Steve Westerberg's promotional materials do an excellent job of making the case for why we should keep this property. Commercial real estate is an outstanding investment to have. And he says this is a once in a lifetime chance to acquire and reimagine these assets for a substantial return on investment. And I couldn't agree more with him. So far through its lifetime, it has provided some pretty tidy dividends for the owners. My cousin Billy would perhaps argue that this is not legacy wealth that we're talking about, but I'm a school teacher. So any extra income is wealth for me.
So should I feel insulted or no? I don't know.
No, you should not feel
Maybe.
insulted. You're right. We're not talking about billions of dollars. This isn't the TV show Succession, but even a little bit of money can be very helpful. And I do believe, like anything worthwhile, relationships and these kinds of investments, they are going to require some infusions of imagination, some capital investments, consistent repairs, and preventative maintenance. If we were to look through the history of the property, we would doubtless see the many times when the property was improved in one way or another. I'm sure we didn't start off, with paved asphalt parking lots and maybe not apartments. And I'm sure there have been many improvements. Most recent, to my knowledge, was the siding project, which was costly and extensive, and it was well worth it. Everybody agrees that it is beautiful and it really updated the look. But aside from that, what other capital investments have the owners made since 1998? I personally believe that there is more that we can do. And I know that this is going to require capital investment. It's going to take money. But I think that it's wrong to simply look at it as we're going to put money into this. The idea is we put money into it to take money out of it. They should offer us a substantial return on those investments. So I think that, we, for the most part, have kind of been absentee landlords, and we have put our trust and our hopes and our needs in the hands of our property managers. And it might be time for us to step in and take a little more active control of those reins, so that we can create a business model that is thriving and does meet the needs that you have for continuing to own this property in our family name. So I would also say that, I'm not particularly in favor of this sale. I feel very intrigued by the challenges that it presents. And I do think that there is some great potential there. I think that if we continue to do things the way that they have always been done, because it's comfortable and it's known and it's easy, we probably will not be able to continue to do this in a long term. You know, maybe we could continue to do it for 5 years or 10 years. But then, as John and Dale have pointed out, there could be a catastrophic thing that happens that wipes out even that. So I just think that as we go into this, we need to be willing to look at it in a different way. I'm not telling you here anything you don't already know, but here are the options as I see them. One, all of the current owners agree to sell the property when we get a bid that we like. Option B would be some owners sell. Owners do have the right of first refusal to a sale. So it is possible that some new iteration of this LLC would be born with some owners selling and others opting to remain. Option C would be that everyone agrees, nope, now is not the time to sell. And then we could explore ways to redevelop the property. In order to redevelop the property, these are the things that I think would probably need to happen. One, we could hire a business consultant to help us identify and maximize our management practices, as well as capitalize on potential revenue streams. We should create a 5-year business plan that takes into account our goals and finds a way to make those happen. I do believe that it would be in our best interest to audit and assess our current property management to make sure that that's still the best fit. I also think, as Meredith, I think, brought up initially, that we should implement a tenant satisfaction survey so that we know how our tenants are feeling and responding to the needs of the property. Another thing I think maybe I don't understand for sure, but maybe others aren't clear as well, are our lease terms and ways that we can recover some of the operating expenses, including taxes and insurance costs. And I think there needs to be a plan along with that 5-year business model for reinvestment and redevelopment. And the ways that we can do that, we can leverage our equity to borrow money for renovations, which I know people have expressed disinterest in, or we could bring in a third-party investor or developer. And this is a whole other kettle of worms that I'm not going to go in today, but it is definitely an option. So those are the options. Looking at this again in purchase scenarios, I think that the Thomas side has a bit of a different consideration than the Nolan side because they came into ownership in 1998. Because of that, there is a pretty large difference in capital gains realizations. And so I think it is worth looking at. If things were to continue exactly as they are today, with no major changes to the business model and relatively unchanged expenses and losses, over 10 years, each of you would, over 10 years, the Nolans would net about $1 million each, and the Thomases would net about $700,000 each over 10 years. And that's just continuing at your current distribution levels. If you were to continue taking that ongoing 10% cut based on this year's figures, over the course of a year, you would be able to put $210,000 towards maintenance capital and investment capital over the course of a year. Investment capital, I think it's important for you to understand that is going to yield future returns. It is not a sunk cost that you can't recover. But even if you choose not to do any cuts to the distributions, there are some other areas in our finances that I think could be recovered monies that could be directed to maintenance and capital investments. So I put together this scenario based on the capital gains liabilities. I know I'll also speak to the 1031 exchange, but I put 3 scenarios in here. If we were to sell at 25 million, 30 million, or 40 million, which is pie in the sky. But if we were to do that, Some things that I took into consideration to come up with the numbers that I'm going to share with you. Obviously, the Realtor Commission and any fees that we might owe to Tony and AJM. Also, our current total business liabilities are 1.224. So those would have to be paid off. And then there's the environmental hazard remediation. I have no idea how to estimate this whatsoever. So I just came up with a ballpark figure. I don't even know if it's in the ballpark, but 250,000. I'm hoping that's extremely high, but I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't think so.
But I don't even know because I'm not sure, with dry cleaning mitigation, I don't know what that looks like. And then I believe in the environmental report, it mentioned something about gas stations. The gas stations are not on our property. So I feel like there would be a way to recover some of that cost from the owners of those properties. But again, don't know anything about environmental hazards. So I just threw a big number in there. So the options in a sale obviously are you can cash out, in which case you'll pay capital gains taxes, or as John has pointed out, you can do a 1031 like kind exchange, which is where you reinvest the proceeds into another commercial property. There are some rules around this, and those have to be considered as well. The step-up basis for the Thomas side of the family, as I mentioned, since they acquired the property in 1998, we don't know what the property was valued at in 1998. So for the purposes of this, I made it worth 1.5 million for each member of the Thomas family. That would have been about 4.5 million overall, 4 million overall. Which seems possible. We do now know the name of the attorney who was in charge of the probate case, and Aunt Laura has contacted them, and they are going to get that information for us, but they weren't able to give it to us as quickly as we wanted it. So again, my assumption here is working, the property was worth 1.5 million for each of the Thomas owners. So again, I'm only speaking to the Thomases here, but if the Thomases were to sell the property at a price tag of 25 million with no reinvestment, each of those owners would take home $1.9 million, and that is after all of the taxes are done. I hyperlinked my spreadsheet where I did all of the tax calculations. And I feel like hopefully I'm on the high side a little bit with my valuations of the property and with the environmental assessment. But I think this is a relatively good number to start with. And just so that the Thomas side knows, so then you take this sale price and you take this money. If you're not reinvesting it into another property, then you would probably invest this money with your financial planners, and you would need to invest 1.75 million, and you would be able to continue to withdraw $70,000 a year, which you're currently earning in distributions, if you follow the 4% rule. And this would protect your principal amount, and that would be available for your heirs. The 4% rule is assuming that you're going to draw the same amount and it's adjusted for inflation every year. A more conservative approach is to take a 3% return on that. And this is if you anticipate that you're going to have a longer term of use for this money. The 4% is good if you think you're going to need it for somewhere between 10 and 30 years. If you're going to think that you might need it for longer than that, a 3% approach is a more conservative approach. There are definitely other approaches, higher returns that you can take. It just does draw down your principal. So at 25 million, my advice would be no sale on the Thomas side. At 30 million, you're making a little bit more. And I think that is definitely a much more comfortable amount of money. And I can see that that would easily keep you very comfortable for the remainder of your life. So I would say at 30 million, I would give it some good consideration. And finally, the pie in the sky at 40 million, hell yeah, sell, get it, take it. You are going to live very, very comfortably, and you will leave a good amount of money for your heirs. So I would say that. Again, I linked this information to my spreadsheet so that you can see how all the calculations are. I would be happy to share it. If you want to do your own similar calculations, you can just plug numbers in and it will do all the calculating for you. So the other option is to do this 1031 exchange. And this is when you take that money that you've made from your sale, you're basically sheltering it because you're putting it right back into another property. It could be a commercial property, it could be land, it could be many different things. But I think since you want to continue to receive income from it, it would need to be another commercial property. This is not something to undertake lightly. You need to get working on this right now if that's something you want to do to shelter your money. Um, it has to be done within, you have to have a property identified for purchase within 40 days of a sale, and then you have to conclude that business within 180 days. So you have 6 months from the time of your sale to get your money reinvested into a property. So that's just something to keep in mind and probably something to start looking at now. You definitely need a team of professionals, including a commercial real estate lawyer, a commercial real estate broker, and your financial planner to guide you through those. Okay, so just looking currently at the current situation, we have vacancies on Arcadia. In 2023, the rent we collected was 401,000 there, 821 and some change. But if we had fully leased those vacancies, we would have brought in $473,000. So we missed out on almost $72,000 worth of money simply because those properties were not fully leased. I do feel very strongly that Tony's contract is very clear about his obligations and efforts to make leasing a priority, and he has financial incentives to do so. By his own account on the Zoom that he was on with us in October, he said he has only utilized word of mouth to fill the vacancies. And I believe he also said there's just much not need for it. People don't really want office space anymore. I'm gonna say I don't think so. I don't fully agree with that. I do feel like there is more that he could have done, and I feel like his contract specifies how he is going to market those properties and to whom he will share that information. So I feel like that is definitely something that is an area where we can recover some money by just getting those rented. So some other areas that I see for increased revenue within our current plan is we have 10 apartments that we are currently renting residentially, 9 2-bedrooms and 1 3-bedroom. Our rents on the 2 bedrooms range from $2,175 to $2,600. Our 3-bedroom apartment is renting only for $2,500, which is less than the lowest 2-bedroom. I'm not sure why there is a variance. It might have to do with tenant longevity. I'm not sure, but at any rate, I think that we should embark on a campaign to level those rents out so that they are equal. If we look at some of the other information, the residential, the general, if we standardize those, just put them all at the top end, we would make $280,000 a year on those 9 apartments. Comparable 3 bedrooms rent in the area for an average of $3,250 a month. That is $39,000 versus the $30,000 that we're currently getting. So I think that's another area to look at, is why our rents are kind of discrepant. Another thing that I noticed, and there's probably a rational explanation for it, but I wasn't able to see that in the numbers. Our total utilities cost was $73,425 in 2023. And of that amount, we paid 52,000 of that. The total amount that was charged back to tenants was only $21,000. And that only went to the warehouse property. It was not charged back to any of our other tenants. That is a recoverable cost. And again, it kind of depends on how the leases are written, but generally speaking, that is a tenant recovery cost that falls under normal operating expenses. And so we should be able to recoup a great deal more of that. Same goes with our real estate tax that was paid. We paid $215,433 in 2023. We only collected, as a common area use, $50,000 of that. Again, that real estate tax is an operating expense that we can charge back to tenants. Again, it depends on how the leases are written, but if they're not written in a way that that's a recoverable tenant fee, that's something that we might want to look at, because there's a whole bunch of money sitting on the table there. And then the insurance that we have paid, which we talk about, continuing to rise. Again, that is a recoverable expense under commercial real estate, and that can be passed along. We have not passed any of that money back to our tenants. We have not charged that back at all. So we are shouldering that whole burden. Again, I think it bears some looking at, because again, a lot of money on the table there. Again, looking at management fees and Tony's commissions, in 2023, we will have paid him $92,000 and some change. According to the appraisal that we had done, the market rate for management fees, including commissions, is 4 to 5% of gross rents. Fully leased, that number would be $50,000. So we might, we might be able to look at that and see if there's something that we can save in our management fees. And then just I threw on, after John sent, in our 2024 budget, we're allocating an additional $20,000 to take care of some of these things related to the sale and to Tony's work with that. So that's another, I think, something that needs to be considered going forward. So those are just some areas within our current budget and our current model that we maybe should be taking a harder look at, where we might be able to recover some of that money back. Now, if you want to go, pie in the sky, and you want to start looking bigger, you have to consider that commercial real estate is a reliable investment, because it has consistent returns, passive income, and a huge amount for growth potential. Westerberg's proportional materials say that this is an exceptionally rare property. It is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. We have all of these wonderful things, and it is strategically located in a very desirable area with easy access to transportation, both through the Metro North and also I-95. We have 47,256 square feet that we can imagine how that money, that area could be spent to improve for us. If I were going to reimagine, Westerberg himself kind of gave me some of this information, as did the appraisal. Just a short distance away from us, a couple of blocks, there is brand new construction, and that construction is currently getting $5,900 to $7,900 for a 2-bedroom. Granted, they are slightly larger and have a second bathroom, but still those rents are pretty astronomical. I've looked through that property and the photos that they have supplied and done their virtual walkthroughs. They're nice, they look nice, but I wouldn't say they're particularly high-end furnishings or outfitting. They have a very tiny fitness center that has a treadmill and a stationary bike and a weight machine, a stationary weight bench with free weights in their basement. It's tiny, and they have a TV. It's tiny, but they're calling it a gym. So I mean, we could offer that. They also have a rooftop deck. We have a lovely rooftop. We could do that. I do not think in looking at their materials that they have dedicated parking, but I'm not 100% sure of that. So if we just look at what we have 10 apartments. Our rents are still pretty variable, so we can bring those all in line. And then we would be able just to capitalize on the rent that we have. I don't know exactly. I was looking at the renderings for our property. It doesn't seem like we have a ton of available parking. I don't know if we have dedicated parking for our tenants, for our residential tenants. Can anybody answer that?
Yes.
We do.
In the back, yes, they have a slot, but yeah, that is the problem, of course, in Old Greenwich generally, is that parking is really a problem. And that was one of the problems when we looked into, renovating upstairs in Arcadia, that the town would require us to have parking, but we don't have parking. And then you get into this, you're gonna have to fight with the town to see if you could buy parking spaces in that general parking area, behind the CVS or whatever. So it is an ongoing thing in the town generally.
Sure.
That parking is scarce.
Do our merchants have dedicated parking?
Not that I know of.
No, they don't.
They do not.
Okay. All right. So I think that parking is definitely an avenue that could be explored. And then if there were some abundance of parking for some absurd reason, there's even an idea that we could offer monthly parking for commuter traffic. That might be something that people would be interested in. If we look even further into the materials that Westerberg and the appraiser provided with us, per Steve Westerberg, he said that if you were to do 10 apartment renovations, he estimated the cost at $40,000 each. And, that seems fairly reasonable. I think that you could double the rent that you're getting. And we could also level them out so that they were all the same. I think the way that Westerberg laid it out was that you would not do this all in one fell swoop, that you would do some in 2024 and some in 2025. And that also, he factored in putting $11,000 and $11,506 into reserves every year for capital improvements or maintenance. I believe that it would be fairly easy for us to add some minor amenities if that would make the property more attractive in some way. The best way that I can even think that we could begin to do that is to really look at the warehouse space. This would be a demo and new construction. Yes, there would be a fairly high price tag to do this, but that again is something that Westerberg is advocating. And based on the information I was able to find in the appraisal, the market premium for rental housing is pretty good right now in the Greenwich area, in the Fairfield area in general. According to the appraisal, the market within the area of influence has increased over the 3+ years due to COVID-19 and a lack of single-family housing supply available for families for sale. The market currently shows a market vacancy rate for apartments within Fairfield County to be 5.2%, which is very low, but even lower within the Greenwich area at 3.1%. So I think we would have good success at leasing additional residential apartments. The existing warehouse is 10,477 feet. I think we could easily convert that into a minimum of 10 new apartments, and we could include those other amenities like the rooftop or a common area or a gym or some of those kinds of things. And we could include covered parking, which would up the value of those apartments. I guesstimate that we could, based on the market research that I did, that we could easily rent those apartments, 2 bedrooms, for $6,000 a piece. We currently make $138,000 from our warehouse space. I think we could make $720,000 from that space. Okay. So I know that, we've talked before about not wanting to take on additional debt. And I know, Dale, I think you specifically said that wasn't something you feel comfortable leaving to your successors, leaving them with debt. I think, though, it just takes an opportunity to kind of have a different vision on that. Currently, right now, rates all went up over the past couple of years. Currently, the loan rate is sitting at somewhere between 5.25 and 5.5. However, the Fed has announced that there will be as many as 3 cuts in 2024. And also, this interest rate on our business loans are deductible, making it an attractive way to fund businesses. And we do have the equity, but we would be stretched a little bit in our debt to income ratio. We would be a little bit stretched unless we could make some recoveries in some of the other areas that I mentioned. Go back. So right now, our current debt to income ratio is sitting at 12.5%. The business could assume more if we were to recover the monies that we're missing right now, and if we look towards the return on our investment as additional revenue for debt repayment. If we were just trying to do it out of the money we're making right now, we absolutely could not do it. But if we could recover some of the charges that we're missing right now, and we can look to what that income could generate, then I think we would be doing really, really well. Lenders generally prefer to see a total debt to income ratio of about 36%, but they may go as high as 50%. This is a commonly accepted practice and a way for businesses to fund the, their redevelopment. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, an alternative is to partner with a redeveloper who would finance and oversee all of this work. This obviously comes with a lot of advantages and disadvantages related to property management, majority ownership, equity, and profit sharing. And it would require a completely different undertaking, which I can't address today, but we do have some potential investors who might be interested in doing that. So I think that's what I have to say. And I've included my notes there.
Thank you for all the work you've gone to,
Yes,
Lisa.
thank you, Lisa.
Obviously, you put a lot
Well
of time
done.
into it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very thorough. Very thorough. I appreciate it very much.
Lisa, do you have an indication of the amount of capital required?
I think it kind of depends on, oops, okay. I'll get back to everybody.
Yeah, obviously on what you want to do, what the priorities are. But
yeah,
you should have
I think priority number 1 would be looking at the areas that we have available to us where we can start to recover some of the monies that we're losing. That would be probably my first year priority, what I would suggest. And then, I think the apartment turnover, I think that's a fairly no-brainer. I think that would be another, next step is to renovate what we have existing. I think to convert the warehouse is a substantial endeavor. I have seen a rendering of the properties along Sound Beach with a third story added. That to me seems like a big undertaking. I would probably rather focus the efforts on the warehouse. To me, that would be an easy demolition, but I'm guessing it would cost $2 or $3 million to put up new construction there. So I think that would have to be a longer term plan.
Over the years, yeah, we looked into once, whether or not moving up was a possibility with a third floor. And that would have to, the whole buildings would have to be completely redone. They,
Yeah.
they're 103
Or
years old.
demolish.
And they
I mean,
wouldn't, I mean,
Yeah.
we were even
Well,
told
yeah.
we couldn't put bricks on the sides of the building because the weight would be
integrity
too much,
is compromised.
for that,
Yeah.
whatever.
I would feel the same way, honestly. And honestly, I wouldn't want to lose the feel of the aesthetic of that property right now. I don't know that I would want to see a third floor added along Sound Beach.
Well, I was just throwing that in as a little point, but yeah, I guess one thing you maybe you don't know that with each new lease, we are having people pay their real estate tax. That is being figured into their leases when we have new leases, and we've been doing it for a while as people's leases are renewed or we get a new tenant or whatever. So, I mean, there's some things I realize you probably, don't know that we have actually tried to do, but, so we are trying to do that, but I haven't looked at it in a while, so I don't really know. I know Steve Westerberg asked for, a list of all of our leases. I know because of course, potential buyers want to know how many years it would be before they could do all the different things that they would probably want to do, which are very similar, I'm sure, to a lot of the things that you are proposing. And of course, it would take quite a few years before you could, clear out the warehouse or, take one building at a time or whatever. And I'm not sure offhand how many years it would be, but I know we looked into that. He wanted to give that information to potential buyers.
John, what's the current loan percentage?
Probably low.
What remains?
Interest
Yeah,
percentage?
I know the balance is $1,073,000.
My
What's
guess
the
would probably
rate?
be 3%, 3.5%. Maybe.
Oh, what
Okay.
the loan, the rate is, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is something like 3 or 3.5, but I'm not sure.
Because currently you're losing $1,300 every month on that loan. Because it's a $7,400 payback and principal is only $3,000. So you're paying $4,400 a month on interest. So you're losing $1,300.
Well, but also that interest is tax deductible.
Oh, I understand that.
But it's money you don't have to operate in the
Correct.
meantime.
Correct.
Lisa,
And
you
you're
got
gonna have a balloon. You've got the balloon coming up in a couple of years too.
2027. Yeah, we'll have to
Right.
roll it over. What that means,
Right.
folks, is the 10-year loan expires in 27. We absolutely will not be anywhere near paying it off. So we'll have to take out a new loan and roll it over, which, and of course, we don't have any idea what the interest rates will be in 2027. Lisa, you've got some great ideas here. As Dale mentioned, the last couple of years, we've been issuing leases whereby the residents have to pay a pro rata share of the property taxes.
Right.
I don't know that we bill them for insurance costs. We could look into that.
No, we don't.
I've been through all the financials and through the rent rolls, and we are not billing that back.
You point out increasing the apartment rents would be a great thing, and it certainly would be. And it is true that Steve Westerberg has been promoting heavily to investors the idea of upgrading the apartments. You can only do that when somebody's lease expires, and then of course you go dark for 3 to 4 or 5 months while you fix it up. And it maybe you could do it for $40,000 a pop. What Westerberg, though, told me the other day, and investors who are really worth their salt will look hard at the building and check the old bones in the building. It may be that the building structure isn't going to withstand the kind of improvements you're talking. And I don't know this, okay? If you could put $400,000 in over the next 5 years and boost the rents, sure, it would be a great source of revenue for us. We're never going to get, I don't think, to the station house, that new development you mentioned near the train station, which is what, 5,000 to 7,000 a month.
And that's just for, yeah.
Yeah, and they have underground parking. We do
They
not.
do?
Yes, and that's Dale made reference to that. One of the difficult things operating in Greenwich is the town of Greenwich. They are awful to deal with. They are a hostile group of people. Getting regulatory approval for anything is awful. For example, we looked pretty closely a year or so ago at trying to turn the small offices on the second floor of Arcadia into apartments. We got an architect's estimate that it would cost $1 million and $1.5 million to do that. But to me, that's a low guess, because first of all, you'd have to go dark upstairs. You'd have to, let everybody's lease expire. Then you're going to have to put new plumbing down through all the first floor stores, because you're going to have a lot more potties up there. The town of Greenwich said you're going to have to do a test on the capacity of your sewer pipe going out to the street. And if it's not adequate, we would be on the hook to replace the sewer pipe out to the street. In other words, ripping up a storefront, ripping up the sidewalk and part of the street, which would be a substantial cost. Greenwich might refuse us that approval too. So we have no guarantee we could do it. Ideally, an investor who buys the property blacks out the whole building and lets everybody's lease expire. 2020 optical, everybody downstairs, and replaces the building or guts it, because it would be very hard to do it on a decent basis. The warehouse is another idea. Steve Westerberg has told me he's discussed with investors, potential buyers, the idea of turning the warehouse into residential properties. It's a great idea, but there again, you're going to have to, first of all, borrow whatever it is, $2 million, $3 million. You're going to have black out the building. In other words, let everybody's lease expire so it's empty, demolish the building, and then you're going to have to create more parking if Greenwich will allow it. Because if they're apartments, we couldn't provide the parking now that they would need to turn that into apartments. Again, you're going to have to get Greenwich's blessing. And then again, you're looking at probably 2 years of having no revenue from the warehouse whatsoever. That would be a giant hole in our budget. The problem here, your ideas are great, but there's a lag between the time you borrow money, if you could borrow it, and your renovation or demolition and replacement. And then when you start getting that money back, it would be a huge hole, one that we couldn't tolerate, I don't think.
You're right. I think the way I would imagine the apartment renovations in particular, as one lease expires, you do that renovation and then it becomes a rolling basis. I think on the existing residential, that's what we would have to do.
That's what we did. The prior generation, you might remember this, and your parents will. Those were what they called cold water plants.
Yeah, they had no hot water, did they? Or most of them didn't.
No hot water, no heat.
Yeah.
And they,
Do you believe in New England? I mean,
What?
I mean, this
I
isn't
didn't
that.
live
It's
there
not that long ago.
I lived there after college with no heat.
Oh my gosh.
wow.
So
Well, it was the store from below kept the heat going.
Our parents' generation did that work, and it was pricey, but we were able to get higher rents. And yes, we could improve each apartment now as it comes in line and get higher rents. As I say, because the station house, that place near the railroad station, is brand new, I don't see how we get to those rents, because we can't.
No. I don't think we could get to those rents with the existing residential, only with new. But we could definitely improve our current residential.
Yes.
Oh
Agree.
yeah, if we had the money, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
back in the day when your parents were going through this, Dale and John, our income, our annual income was about at least double what it is now, and so we were able to cover
Had more money, yeah.
the cost of
Yeah, we had
those.
plenty of money. Mhm.
Yeah,
Much more money.
and that brings me to a question. I don't know the answer to this, but if we were to take out another loan, my understanding is that lenders, if they took a look at what we take out in disbursements, would turn us down, which would
That's what
mean
I've
that-
been told. You know,
That's
I
what-
Meaning
asked-
what? The
The monthly, our
The
monthly
monthly
disbursement.
draw,
Yeah,
they,
you're gonna have
because
to
of that.
As you mentioned, we're taking out almost 50% of your,
Yes, yes.
And
And
the
it's too
reason,
much.
we're
You know.
doing that is because it's a retirement
Vehicle, yeah.
property or an
right.
income for
And I'm
us.
saying it can still be that retirement income for you. It can still be a supplemental income, but it could be more. But in the short term, it maybe needs to be less so that you can generate those higher returns.
But
I
how
hope I
much
live
less?
long enough to
I
see it.
think, that's something we have to talk about is the elephant in the room. And that's been the elephant in the room for years. And it has, you may think we haven't done a lot of things we should have done. Well, the elephant in the room determines a lot of what goes on, and how much money we take out as income determines how much money we have left and are able to do things.
Sure.
But, any mention of reducing the income has usually, been voted down immediately. So, one of the things we have to talk about with your parents, and us, the owners, is really, since they use this as income, how much are people willing to reduce their income? Because that makes a huge difference. And my understanding from my lawyer and from Tony, when I asked him about the bank, giving us a second loan, is that the way they look at it is if you're taking that much money out for disbursements, you don't need to be borrowing money from us. They would not give us money to do some of these projects without us drastically reducing our disbursements.
They're
And
not
I
gonna get
understand
it.
that, I guess. But
I
again,
think that's a valid point, and I think that's definitely, that could very well be the reality of it. But also, until we try, we don't know for sure. But I suspect you're probably very right about that.
well, I mean, I think, like I said, it's kind of like we need to have an open discussion amongst the owners about, how much they need this income. I mean, everybody uses this as income, and how much of a reduction would they be able to, deal with and would accept? Because again, then it determines how much money not only can you borrow, but how much extra money would we have of our own money to put back into improvements. And I really don't know what the answer is for people when it comes to that. That's not something we've ever really talked about. And it is something we need to address,
Yep.
because our
it is.
10%, we can all live with 10%, but is 30%, 40%, 50% something people could live with? I don't, what do people think about that?
I'm gonna throw a hand grenade and then I gotta go. But I
Oh,
do have to
yeah,
leave.
sure.
And I think I've said it ad nauseum, and I think Kathy agrees.
Hey, Lisa.
My
can you-
wife can't. My mom can't afford to take those kind of hits given her current situation. She relies solely on it,
She has
and
said
she
that
has
to
a
us.
huge outlay now, which is unfortunate. That is absolutely crushing her, making
Yeah.
it tough for her. So
Yeah.
the
Right.
10% she could do, and again, Kathy, you could give color to it, but my mom could not agree to any kind of sizable reduction in income.
Well, and
And
we
that's what we
couldn't
need to
either.
know, Bill. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that, because that's what we need to.
Kathy,
we
am I
need to deal
right?
with
Am
that.
I?
Yes, I mean, my mom she lives by herself now, and my dad's care is 7,000 a month or more.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And that for
Yeah.
any wealthy person or anybody who has saved their money, it is a huge hit. So she's unable to take more. I'm sure she'd be willing and for the better of the group to take more of a hit, but she can't take 50 or 100%.
No, and I think that,
I mean, she
no,
just,
and obviously that's understandable. Absolutely.
can I
And
add
we need to know.
Can I add something to similar to Ethel? We live in a lifestyle that's very comfortable. If we had to take a 50% hit, we would probably have to sell our house, which is not the
Right.
end of the world. But the bigger question for me is what happens if something like what happened to your dad happens to John or happens to me? We've been doing our math on the basis of assuming that one of us gets sick. We have some long-term care insurance, but we rely very heavily on this income if it comes to having one of us in a nursing home, or God forbid, two of us. And we're 70 and 72. So that's not necessarily so far away. Just saying.
Well, I
Right,
think, you know,
right.
we can address that
Absolutely.
as well. My family, my father has looked into this, and the costs are staggering for what it costs to live outside of your home, especially when you have a home that is paid for. So I absolutely understand that. My goal, number one, Dale, I'm not criticizing or being negative about anything that anyone's done. My only thing is I believe that the property still has more to give us.
Yep.
And so I appreciate the work that you as the stewards have done, but I feel like you have another generation beneath you. And
Mhm.
Max, I don't know how you feel about this. You're on the call. But my cousins and I, we've talked and we have some interest in kind of, you know, being in the back seat and driving a little bit. And while you guys are still capably navigating at the, you know, in the driver's seat. So I don't mean any disparagement. I'm not criticizing any way of handling the property. I just feel like it has more to offer. I feel like it still can provide for us, barring that $40 million offer. If that comes, hell yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. I just think it's, again, you know, there's a lot of, you know, layers here. There's a lot of things that have to be considered and looked at and how you could do it and stuff. But I appreciate all the work you've put into it. I
Yeah.
do.
Hey, Lisa, can you get your background notes off the screen?
Sure, I thought it was paused. Thank you.
There you are.
There you are. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
We're back.
John, do we have any offers yet? As
No.
reviewed by Steve Westerberg?
Perfect timing. Within a week or so, he's going to what he calls call for offers, and that will literally open the gates for whatever we get.
That'd be interesting.
He says he anticipates multiple offers, and he doesn't. And I guess I don't have any idea what multiple is. 2, 5, 7. He gave me an update just this morning, and it's an impressive update just in terms of numbers. See if I can find it. I had it hit it here somewhere. I believe he said he had 140 something confidential packages out for which you have to sign the non-disclosure agreements. And I'm looking for the other number on the tours. Somewhere in the neighborhood of, and I wish I could find it. I want to say, I'm trusting in memory, 50 some tours, including apparently a tour by a billionaire this morning. When the calls, the offers come in, it's his job to get on them and start screening them and literally picking at all the details to see, you know, not only who's offering what, but how they would offer it, what flexibility they might have, and to make sure that to vet them, to make sure they have the ability to pay. He'll probably review that with us very briefly and see which offers, you know, we could bring to you guys the best of the crop. And then we would have to, perhaps on fairly short notice, call a meeting like this to vote on one of these offers. And here's the reason why. Westerberg's the subject matter expert. He says if you have, let's say, 5 people, 5 entities who offer money, and they don't want to probably sit for very long. So if we take too long to get back to the first guy, some of the others may walk after a period of weeks or months that we're not interested. And you don't want that to happen. If we say turn down one offer, but we latch onto the second one, we'd like for the second guy to be there, if you follow me. So we'll need to move with some nimbleness to look at these things. Now, here's just a scenario he explained to me, and this is new to me, and I assume it's new to all of us. If we enter into a sales agreement with an entity, it starts a process whereby they really do some in-depth due diligence. They're going to look very hard at environmental contamination. What Westerberg suggested up front was that we do this phase 1 analysis, which we did. That's essentially a walkthrough and checking the records, municipal records, for any history of contamination. The dry cleaners can be a real problem. The environmental firm we talked to out of White Plains, New York, that did the work, AKRF, said that it can cost, in some cases, in the worst scenario, $500,000 to clean up the environmental contamination from one dry cleaner.
Oh,
It
Wow.
could be a whopper. That's
and
why.
we have two?
Correct.
We have two, but only one of them does the actual cleaning on the property, the
Oh, okay.
long cleaners.
And
The
that's
others are
Wong.
more, you just go pick it up kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wong has been a dry cleaner in some form or fashion since 1961, long before the environmental laws were like they are today. So it's entirely possible there's contaminants. They flushed stuff down the toilet, dropped it into the ground. What they would do in this phase 2 investigation is literally drill down through sidewalks, through parking lots, and take soil and water samples to see if there's contamination. If
Yeah.
there is, then there's the problem of the contamination cleanup itself. What the buyer would do if we latched onto one and we had an agreement, they would want to discount the price to offset that, of course. Let's say $500,000. And we know
How do
that
we know though what the remediation cost might be?
they will probably get an estimate of that after the phase 2.
Okay.
That I would imagine that would, the cleanup firm would say, here's what you got, here's what's going to cost to get all that out.
But we're not conducting phase 2,
No.
the buyer would.
Correct. And that
Uh,
was Westerberg's idea, to get that all off our hands. And for one thing is the expense. Another thing is the buyer is probably going to borrow quite a bit of money from a bank or banks. And the banks are very conservative. They want to protect their investment. So they're going to probably want to oversee the way the environmental contamination cleanup is done and not let us do it, on the theory that we might do a bad job or we might cut corners, right? So the new
Sure.
buyer is going to have to answer to the bank for that.
But how do we know what a fair reduction in price is to do that work?
That would be subject to negotiations back and forth between our lawyer and I assume the lawyer for the buyer, that you would open up a sales contract and there's almost certain to be some kind of contingency clause that this offer is based or is contingent on the cost of the environmental remediation. And remember, the environmental cleanup is a result of a state law in Connecticut that I know Ethel knows about, that if there's a property transfer or sale, you have to deal with the environmental contaminants first. And as I say, when you have dry cleaners that go back that far, the environmental outfit out of White Plains said, you're probably going to find something. The other things we have to remember is a good 2 million to 2.5 million comes right off the top at closing, right? We have to pay off the $1 million Stanford Bank and Trust loan from the exterior. The realtor's fee could be in the neighborhood of $750,000. There's legal fees, and the state of Connecticut has a transfer tax because Connecticut always wants to get their fingers into things. So that's a percentage of the total cost of the transaction. So you can figure that, a good $2.5 million would come off the price. So if you have let's say you have an offer of 27.5 million, you have to view it as 25 million. You talked to Lisa some about the marketing materials that Steve Westerberg put together, which I thought were excellent. And he does, in fact, have that theme of a once in a lifetime purchase. And of course, that's sales hype. We all know that. When he talks to the investors, I've had a few conversations with him. He's had a few kind of turned off when they look at the insides of the buildings and they see, for instance, the shabbiness inside Arcadia, or the sort of beat up stairways up to the apartments, or the fact that the apartments, as you've said, don't look really up to snuff. And they have to think about how much money they would have to put in to get the performance of the property up, because virtually everyone who looks at it says our property is underperforming, which is a simple way of saying we don't get as much rent revenue as they want. Most of the owners, of the potential owners, the potential buyers, say they want something in the order of a 5% rate of return or cap rate. And Westerberg says, doing his numbers with these people, that would be lucky to get to a 4% cap rate. So those are all things that can discourage potential buyers, that either they drop out or they don't offer us as much as we want. So we've talked about the numbers we could get. Westerberg, as I understand it, is telling investors that we would like to have something in the $25 to $30 million range. Some of them look at them kind of cross-eyed saying, wait a minute, I have to put a certain amount of money in it. You're asking me to do the environmental cleanup. So we'll have to see what offers we get, how we can counter them, but we might want to temper our expectations a little bit. And I say that because of these quote challenges. And it makes it more important, Lisa, you made some excellent points about the 1031 exchange. I'm looking very seriously at doing a 1031 exchange. And your side of the family, as you pointed out, has owned the property longer. They're going to face potentially a bigger capital gains tax bite unless they take either the 1031 approach or something else to avoid capital gains taxes. And as I understand it, and of course you got to work with financial pros, if you reinvest your property in new property or reasonably new property, you can get the kind of return you get now, maybe better. And if you structure it correctly, the next generation, your generation, might not have to pay capital gains tax. It depends on how it's structured.
No, you're absolutely right. And I talked to both our estate lawyer and our financial planner who gave the same advice. They all said, hold on to this property, don't let it go. But if you do, a 1031 is really the only way to shelter that money.
Yes.
And you do have to reinvest it. And then, the advantage is then you can pass it to your successors upon your death, and there's no inheritance tax on that. So the step-up basis would be the only thing that they have to worry about when it comes to their generation, next generation after that.
Right.
So it's definitely it's definitely a worthy idea, but it's also, not just something that the average lay person probably knows anything about. And so you really need to have a team that's working on your behalf, from a commercial real estate broker to your financial planner to your estate lawyer or a commercial real estate lawyer. You've got to have all those people helping you get that in place. And again, the turnaround time is 6 months, from the sale of your property to the closing on a new property.
Is that Lisa?
Yes. Yeah. That's all true, Lisa. And I talked to a 1031 guy again yesterday for a refresher, and he suggests actually starting now on starting working with somebody like that. What do they call it? An intermediary. I've forgotten the term. A lawyer, a specialist, and with your financial advisor, and start to identify properties that you could buy.
Yeah, I think they call them an IQ person or something. Yeah.
I'd like to think of myself as an IQ person, but I can't get there.
Yeah, no, it would really, but everything's in flux because you don't really know how much money you have. And honestly, when we're looking at it from the Thomas side, we have a little bit less that we're able to invest. And so being able to find another commercial real estate property that pays you a $70,000 dividend a year, when you have 1.9 million maybe to invest, that could be a challenge. So.
Yeah, certainly there's work to do. No question about that. And it's the quality of the financial advice you get is, what you'd rely on, because this, I think, is above all of us, our sophistication levels. But the nice thing is, the obvious thing, I guess, is you control your money. You have sole control over the investment, how it's done. And the key is really sheltering your proceeds from a sale from the tax man. Because if you can keep the government out of your pocket and not get that capital gains tax bite, it becomes much more favorable, and the actual price of the property is less critical.
Agreed. But you have to be able to still receive the dividend, because that's what I hear everyone saying, that dividend is what's important.
Right. And the thing also about it, just FYI, for me, it would be, we don't have to deal with a Tony. We don't have to, manage the property. We don't have to have our family, person each year spend a lot of time more than, you'd have to be retired to spend the amount of time that.
Well, with all due respect, even if you invest in another commercial property, you're still going to have to be part of that board.
No, if it's 1031 exchange, you don't have to do any of that.
No,
you're not required.
Well, you're still investing in a commercial.
It's kind of like investing in a 1041, a 401k or an IRA. It's own.
I thought it was literally purchasing another property that you. similar to
No.
this.
No,
No.
someone else assumes all the responsibility for handling that.
So is it
It's
like an
essentially like a
investment
mutual
group that
fund.
does it?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like
like
a
a mutual
mutual fund, kind of, you know.
It's like a mutual fund. They handle all the particulars, they handle all the finances, they handle all the distribution.
Huh. That's not how my estate planner explained it to me, but well, that's good to know.
It is true, Lisa, because believe me, I've asked a lot of questions. I would love to be in a management headache-free environment where literally the money would come every month, no questions asked, you know? And
Right.
it can be done, but again, you need obviously some quality financial advice, and that's what we all need to be looking at, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My question, this is Meredith. My question is though, I've spoken to my friends who are also, as you know, our advisors. And they said that these 1031s are not something that's easy to come by.
Oh, I disagree.
Why
I
would
don't
that
think,
be?
Well, I'm just telling what we've been told from our advisor.
No, if you do it right, they're very easy to come by. A 1031 is essentially a DST, which is a Delaware Statutory Trust. They've been around for decades.
Oh, yeah, no, I know what a 1031 is. I'm just
Right.
saying that I think that the process is a very complicated process to get through.
Meredith, I'll tell you, I talked to Steve Westerberg yesterday, and this is just one example. His company, Marcus and Millichap, does a very substantial business in arranging 1031s every year. I mean, they crank out a lot of them, frankly. And if you want, I can send you the name of the guy he connected me with, just for educational purposes. I can send it to all of you, and you can
Yeah,
just.
you could send it along, that's great,
thank
but
you.
yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
pretty informed.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not like if we had to sell, we'd all be on our own to figure out where the property is and which one we can afford. There's a lot of established teams who specifically focus on 1031s that you can put your faith in to do all the work for you, and you're just involved in, here's my target market, here's the age of the building we'd be hoping for, the property type. But it wouldn't be up to us to just figure it out within 45 days.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And I like the aspect of, then we have the control to if we'd like to try to find a newer property that requires less capital investment up front, to then work with a new property manager and still have the same type of project where we're involved if we want to be, or choose the route of the REIT or real estate investment trust option, where we're just taking the new gains that we have, dumping it into an investment vehicle with no work required, and then just reaping the benefits from there. So it's nice to have those two pathways depending on how much involvement you necessarily want to have if the sale is to happen anyway.
Right.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks, Max.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered one heck of a lot of ground here. I was going to talk about, quote, reasons to sell, but you know what? You guys can read. I sent this email out a few days ago, and I've touched on some of it already, and Lisa's made a very, very fine case for reasons to keep the property, or at least think about how to do that. I think we've got all of us a lot of food for thought. The next step, as I say, is that our realtor says that within a week or so, he's going to be calling for offers. He should get some offers. He'll hit hard at screening those offers, and then get back to us with the recommended one or two to consider voting on. And we can say yay or nay. That may happen fairly quickly, as I understand it from him, in the next few weeks. So what I would ask everybody, in particular the owners, is if you could be sort of nimble. We may have to call one of these Zoom meetings on relatively short order. I mean, within a matter of days. And I know that's asking a lot, but it would be important, I think, to get back to these people within a reasonable amount of time, yay or nay, or counter them, or whatever we choose to do. And if we don't like an offer, then we move on to the next multiple offers. So
John, is there a minimum threshold at which we would not consider an offer?
Well, that's a fair question. You probably know that a fellow named Michael Rudder made us an offer for $20 million before we even had a realtor, and we didn't counter him because we wanted to test the market. So I think it goes without saying we wouldn't consider $20 million. Our appraisal was just a hair under $23 million. You can make of that what you will. I would like us to get above the appraisal anyway, because some comes off the top. And again, it makes it more important to do this 1031 method, in my way of thinking, to protect your investment and shield it from taxes, so that your chunk of the change stays your chunk of the change, and Uncle Sam doesn't swallow part of it, you know. I can't say. I guess we're going to have to look at the all of us look at the offer together and make what we will of it, and we should have the ability to counter like you do with the house. How about if we go to this and see if the party will move, you know?
Well, now, when you say multiple offers may come in with, you know, close to one another within several days.
Yes.
You know, I mean, my only experience is selling residential real estate, you know, and an offer comes in and your realtor calls you and says, all right, you got an offer for this. And you say, yay, nay, maybe.
Yes.
So would he then say to us, all right, I got 3 offers, one at 26, one at 22, and one at, you know, 28. Do you want to consider any of those?
Mhm.
Is that what he would do?
I believe so. The way he explained to me, when he used the term call for offers originally, I thought that was sort of a open the gates and the horses run out and you start the race. He's
Yeah.
trying to pitch that more as a deadline. In other words, dear buyers or potential buyers, think of this as a deadline. Get your offers into me as close as you can to X date, so that he would have them within a short amount of time. So whatever choices would have, presumably, you know, would come to us fairly quickly within a week or two. That's what he tells me. Now we'll see how it actually works in practice.
Yeah, he has said it's not really exactly the same as, you know, residential real estate, but
Right.
you know, by him telling them, you know, an estimate of when he's going to call for offers, they're already working up their offers. So when he calls for them, apparently they have them all ready and will submit them within a couple days. So we could have a bunch. We just don't know.
Yeah, I think each family needs to come up with their own determination of what their minimum would be. For example, let's say somebody came 27 million, that's 9 million each. Is that sufficient for the Thomases 3, the Nolans 2, and the Nolans 2? You know, that sort of way. You need to start looking at that and thinking about it. What is the minimum I need for my
Yeah,
third of the
because, you know,
family?
as you've said, your tax situation is much, much different than ours, and how much you're gonna have to pay out capital gains unless you do a 1031 or whatever is very different,
Yeah.
you know? So I mean, it would be helpful if everybody had that conversation.
Right.
Well,
ahead
could
of
we
getting
also
offers.
talk about the mechanism then, in terms of reading our LLC agreement? I just want to make sure that I understand, and perhaps anyone else, the right of first refusal of owners to choose not to sell. So it's my understanding that, you know, if the Thomas side said, no, we can't sell at that number, then we would have the option of buying the other shares out. Is that correct?
That's
Right.
the way
For
I
example,
understand it.
if Dale, let's say Dale and Donna said they wanted to sell their third,
Right?
then we'd all have to agree on a composite value for the property. Let's say 27 million. That would mean that Dale and Donna would get 9 million. The Thomas and or John and Nancy and Liz would have to come up with a plan to pay Dale and Donna $9 million for their share, and you split it however you would work it.
And if I understand correctly, we have 60 days.
Correct.
Okay.
And at that point, we have the option to go out to other investors, which I doubt would happen, but that's, yeah, you are correct. You have 60 days from the day we want to sell our third for you to make a determination as to whether you can afford the finances and come up with the money to pay Dale and or Dale and Donna.
Okay.
Okay.
And at the end of the
You're on. Okay.
at the end of the 60 days, if any of the owners did not want to buy that share,
right,
where does it go from there?
Well, then
You're free to sell it to
would
somebody else.
probably not happen.
yeah,
So, I mean-
but we do have the option to go to you know,
You
Elon
could-
Musk.
you would
say we
have
wanna
the
buy-
option. You would have the option at that point then to find somebody that was willing to buy your share from the outside.
Right,
Correct.
and you would have no say into who we sell it to,
Right,
Correct.
but
unfortunately, but that's the way it's written.
no, I understand that, and I just wanted to make sure that
Right,
my understanding was how it worked. If you
Right,
could
yeah.
find somebody that wanted to buy a third of the property, that would be
Right.
what you would do.
yeah, that would be
And it's
ideal.
a
So-
little disingenuous to say thirds. We're not actually split by thirds, but
Well, no, I'm saying Dale and Donna would be a third. John, Nancy and
Right.
Liz are a third. and
Right,
the
right, right.
Thomases are a third.
Right,
So
right.
if Dale and Donna both wanted to sell, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, at that point, then you'd have to have Tommy go through the couch and get all of his change to buy out Dale and Donna.
I got it in my back pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, we would be scrounging through the couch for sure.
Oh,
And then
come on, Tommy. You just sell part of your Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, right.
Then the other question I have, typically in a closing on a commercial property, what does that timeline look like?
Well, it would be stretched out because of this environmental thing. First of all, if we entered into a sale, this is from Steve Westerberg. I've talked to him about this. If you enter into a sale agreement, it starts the clock running where they're going to do some really serious due diligence. They're going to dig into everything.
Sure.
Presumably they take on that phase 2 environmental assessment. And if they were willing to, the cleanup, that's going to take some time. Closing could be several months out, conceivably.
So the negotiation for the price could actually be ongoing a little bit. So let's say they offered us a price. We said, okay. And then they undertake that second phase testing and they see it's going to take $500,000 to do the work. So now they say, well, we're going to readjust what we offered to account for this cost. So, does the negotiation remain open for us? Can we say at any point, oh, wait a second, hey, no, that's not going to work for us? Because at that point, they'd have already done the phase 2 testing. So I feel like we're on the hook at that point.
Good question.
Well, it's a good
I think in
question.
contract you have the option to
Yeah.
you can go a different way.
Yeah,
during-
you
during
can
the
get rid of it
negotiation
at that
process.
point. Because they're not going to do the phase 2 actual work until there's an agreement among all the parties.
Right.
Right.
That
But
would mix.
but let's say that it really is only $250,000 to do the remediation,
Right.
but we've already accepted, it's going to take $500,000. I mean, potentially we're losing out on that.
So I guess it would depend on how they word that part of the agreement,
Yeah.
I mean, I
This is
imagine
just
we could
something I would
insist.
want, for that to be some clarity when and if there were a contract.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
and I would
Well, that
imagine
makes sense. Yeah.
Because
Right.
we don't
Of
want
course.
to give them more money to do the
No,
cleanup than needed.
Absolutely not.
Agreed.
No, that's true.
Wrapping this up.
Yep.
Okay, so our next move is just to wait for Steve. to
Correct.
right,
Right.
right.
Get
That's
really
right.
serious.
And as I say, Laura, I think the pace will pick up based on what he's told me, that if he gets quote multiple offers, whatever that means, 2, 3, 6, and he goes through it and he recommends the very best to us, we might want to seriously try to pull together one of these meetings as soon as we can, within a few days, to evaluate it. And if we like it, fine. If we turn it away, then maybe you go to offer number 2 to see whether she counters you at a better level. You know how that works. It's all in the art of the deal.
So
I
everybody,
don't think
please,
there's a problem with us getting together because we're all retired.
well,
Speak for yourself.
hopefully, but yeah, not everybody, but,
For myself, it's
yeah.
right.
I think all the owners are, aren't
We
they?
don't
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, all the original owners are retired.
Yes.
Well, his proxy is not.
Right,
All
yeah, I
right,
understand.
know. Just everybody, please, I know I've talked to you about this before from all my times as a manager, but please be checking your emails because we aren't going to be having a lot of time. If people, we need to get in touch with people quickly. Right, John?
Yes. Yes.
And there's always the good old cell phone.
Right,
yeah.
right.
And I will use it, Tommy. Believe me. I will use it.
John doesn't
I
believe in
wonder-
Zoom.
if it would be helpful at all if, since we seem to have some difficulty tracking all of the emails, if we might consider going to, unless it were an absolutely urgent matter, to maybe doing like a weekly digest of email. So like all the information just came out once a week to kind of review what's new. I just feel like, right now people's inboxes are filling and maybe not getting cleared out as quickly or thoroughly as they should be. So maybe if we condense and do a weekly update, unless it was an urgent matter.
Sure. Sure. I could try to do that on, say, Saturdays, although I suspect at this point we're going to sort of get down to the nitty gritty. But I'll be happy to do that because we'll have some housekeeping emails still, the maintenance issues and so forth from Tony. And,
Just a thought.
that's always going to That's always going to happen.
Well,
Speaking of Tony, John.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't. His monthly fees for additional work. Do we have any idea what that is going to be looking like going forward?
I mentioned this earlier. At the end of December, we had a grand total, all sales related expenses of 9,000 something. Of that, Tony was 3,000. The rest was environmental cleanup work, some legal fees, and something or other else. It's in the latest report.
Right, I saw that. I was just wondering if his fee was 3,200, I believe, which equates to about 26 hours of phone calls.
Well, his total for HAM was $3,000, and what he told us, and Dale remembers this, he would charge us $125 an hour for himself. If it's Megan, his daughter, or the handyman, or whatever, it's something less, like 75 an hour. So it's a mixed bag, but 3,000 is his total through December 31.
Did we get a breakdown of what constituted that 3,200?
Yeah, we should have. Yeah.
I have it. I'll send it to you as soon as I get off here. I think I gave it to Lisa the other day, did I not? Or maybe I'm imagining this.
Anyway, I saw that in an email.
Yeah, I think, I think we've pretty much determined though that going forward, Tony shouldn't have any extracurricular work related to
Very
the
little.
sale of the property.
Right, no, that's
Very
right,
little.
that's
Just
right.
a few $100, very little.
Minimal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, why would he
Steve's
have
running around doing
anything beyond?
I'm sorry?
Why would he, what would be an example of something he might need to do post-sale that would be outside of the scope of his current contract?
Well, this wouldn't be post-sale. This would probably be, and I'm just guessing here, kind of a cleanup. Like, let's say he sent the handyman Mike Balcom over to let somebody into the building if, and I'm just making this up, if Steve Westerberg was going to be late. Or if Megan she's out in Iowa now, if she had to send some additional information to Steve Westerberg, who's still getting questions from potential buyers. Every week I see an email or two from saying, I need this. A potential investor wants this. And then Megan generates the thing. So that's an hourly charge for her. But as I say, that should be coming to an end because his last tours of the property will be this week.
Oh.
As I understand it. Well, we're getting very close to the time we're going to mesh into hopefully seeing some offers.
John, would he consider, like, if he gets offers and submits them and nobody wants to go forward with any of them, would he do a second wave of those things of seeking offers or more marketing, or how would that work?
Going out to the driveway.
Yeah, it's a good question. His contract with us runs through the end of April, so I would imagine, he stands to make a pretty good fee if he pulls off the sale. So I would think he's extremely motivated to do that.
Max has something to say.
Okay, I was going to say along the same lines. Since he's got months to go, he's going to want to put in the effort. But depending on what offers come in, it could he could not turn against us, but then come back to us to be like, I think you need to rethink your expectations for what you're going to get. And at that time, we'd have to decide, like, maybe it's not going to work out at this time or not work out with Steve. We could consult another realtor for their shot at it. We could go the route of online auction sale through one of CoStar's big software program in the CRE industry that can do online sales where people do their due diligence ahead of time. They put in offers, you set a minimum cap, and that kind of expedites the process. But yeah, I think he's going to want to put in the extra effort because that's a big commission for him. So,
Yes.
so we got options.
Take Duke.
Anybody else with questions about anything?
I want to thank Lisa again very
Yes,
much
thank
for
you.
all the work that you
Yes.
put into it. And can you give me back the meeting?
Oh,
So I can-
maybe.
Nothing personal, but I want to close it out.
Or Lisa, you can take it with you if you want.
I might be able to do that. I don't know that I've ever been the
Oh, let's see.
guest
How would you
host.
do that?
Let's see. Let me see here.
Yeah, give it back to the one that originally screwed it up.
He's going to have to send us a
own
new
it.
link just to leave.
Say
You're
that.
fired, Nancy, you're fired.
That's fine with me, man.
We apologize for the bumpy takeoff.
Yeah.
Oh,
but-
blame it on
We
Zoom.
appreciate you doing.
No, it's not your fault.
Well, Billy said
Very
Teams.
short, but I gotta take the
Well,
dog
I
out.
can remove you. Let's see.
Well, Lisa
just
could,
left.
Lisa could just end the meeting herself, couldn't she?
Leave
Yeah.
the meeting.
No, I guess.
But I have to, it's recording.
Oh,
so
yeah,
It
yeah.
would go onto
Oh,
her
yeah.
computer at that point. But let me see if I can figure it out.
Uh,
Participants. No.
Maybe it's up here.
It should be
Technology is so much fun.
view. Wait a minute.
Lisa, thanks again for that very, very thorough
Yes.
presentation. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, Lisa.
He gets it all from me.
Oh, we can tell that, Tommy. Yeah, and now I don't see it. There was a place at one time where you could.
Yeah, I'm
you-
not, let's see, meeting, okay, record. Is it recording still on your
It's
screen?
still, it,
Yes.
I
Yes,
saw mine.
That's
is
Yeah,
it?
mine.
Mine's recording, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Lisa, can we get copies or can you send out that information that you all went through